Are you ready for a success story? Today, we're going to talk to a mom who overcame the odds and reunited with her children. Join us today on Fostering the Future.
Welcome to the Fostering the Future podcast, a show about all things child welfare, dependency, adoption, and foster care. Here are your hosts, veterans in the world of child welfare, Jack and Kat.
We believe that every human has incredible and equal value regardless of what side of the courtroom we sit on. We hope that everyone feels welcome and accepted here on Fostering the Future.
Make sure you follow us on Facebook or Instagram as Fostering the Future Podcast, or check us out on our website at fosteringthefuturepodcast.org.
Completing a case plan and attaining reunification is one of the most difficult things a parent can do. Today, we have a mom who did just that. I want to introduce you to our special co-host, Mac.
So we just want to welcome you and thank you for coming today, Mac, and talking to us.
Yes, thank you so much.
Thank you for having me.
Do you think that you could tell us a little bit about your story, about how you came to be in this situation that we're in today?
So I just had a problem where I couldn't handle my feelings, so I started using, and then I couldn't stop, and I got my kids taken away from me. I did what I could the first time around, but I was not doing it to the full extent that I needed to, so my kids got taken twice from me, and this time around I have more support, and I put in everything I have to get my kids back. So
yeah, and that's going to happen in the very near future, isn't it?
yes, very soon.
It's so exciting. And I just have to say how much I admire you for sharing all of that. It's just really brave and really admirable for you to be willing to share all of that and to even do all of that. Just takes a ton of work.
Yeah, I have to say, of all the kids that come into care that I've seen and all the parents that I've met, it really is rare to see someone actively make change in their life, and I've definitely seen that in you. So I just think we both think you're awesome.
We do. You have to just turn yourself inside out, and you've just done it.
Yeah, absolutely.
It was not easy in the beginning, but it was definitely worth it.
Yeah. So I was wondering if you could tell us a little bit about what happened when the kids were first removed from you and how that affected you. Because when that happens, that is a trauma for both you and the children.
So when my kids were first taken from me, they went with a family member, and personally, I think going to family members is just not a good thing because they already have this biased opinion of you, and they don't seem to help you as much as the state would as if they went to foster care. I was terrified when I found out my kids were going to foster care. Like, I wanted to know where my kids were, what the address was, what's these people's first and last names. But I didn't get that right offhand. But eventually I did get more information, and honestly, them going to foster care was the best thing that could have happened.
So in your case, and I had forgotten about that, and now I'm kind of remembering, is that when they were initially removed, they went to a relative. So in that case, at least it was somebody you could call, right? But then, sometimes you can and sometimes you can't. And, I definitely, just to support what you're saying, I've seen a lot of situations where children went to family members in other cases. And, whereas the parent thought that this is the best thing because my kid's going to a family member and, at least I know the child is still in my family and, I know where they're going. But a lot of the times when the child goes to a family member, they're, instead of being like an unbiased third party, you're going to someone who's already quasi-involved in your life. and sometimes can hold things against you and make it a little more difficult for you to progress. So I have seen that in other cases. Have you seen that?
I have, and
Kat?
it can really be both good and bad. I've seen family members really work against the biological parent and not want the kids to go home.
Yeah.
Because they're at their, they're kind of like, see, I told you so.
Right.
I told you this was a bad situation, and look, now we have your kids.
Right.
And they're just kind of gathering information.
I mean, obviously there are some like biological relatives that take kids where it's like the best case scenario. Sometimes grandparents will take a kid and it's almost as if, the child wasn't removed from the family because
Right.
they're able to maintain those relationships and the grandparent is able to. But you know what I've seen a lot, and I think we've talked about it before and you've mentioned this as well, Kat, is that a lot of the times relatives will say yes to having a child placed with them because they feel guilt or a responsibility to do it, but they don't actually want to do it.
Right.
And then so their actions really do play out like that, and kids can kind of tell that they're not really wanted there.
So they're operating out of resentment. And so I've had conversations with like grandparents who will say, I'm supposed to be retired right now. I'm supposed to be, enjoying my
Right.
life right now. And instead I have 5 kids. And I've said things like, you don't have to do this. Because kids also deserve to be in a place where they're wanted.
Right.
So, and then they'll say things like, well, I have to. I have no choice.
Right.
So I never really end up knowing how those situations turn out, but those are sad situations. And I do think foster care is a better situation in some of those situations.
Yeah, I mean, sometimes it really depends on the dynamic. But what you were saying is that when they first came into care, they went to a relative, so at least you knew where they were. But then they went into foster care, and that was like a scary, it's almost like a whole second trauma, because you're like, oh my gosh, they're taking my kids from this place that I know, and whether that's good or bad, but you don't know where they're going next.
Yeah, that
and
must have been terrifying.
That was pretty much it. I mean, slowly they started coming out with like what their school mascot was, and I was really nosy, so I Googled and found out more information.
Yeah. But I mean, I've got to say, like, if I were in your shoes and my children were removed, like, the first thing I would be doing is gathering as much evidence as I could to find out where they are and to try and make sure they're okay. So, like, I don't think you should be embarrassed about that. I think that's, like, totally natural, and it just comes out of the fact that you care about your kids and want to make sure they're okay.
Absolutely.
My kids also don't know how to keep anything to themselves. So,
That's
like,
true.
on visits, they would tell me anything that was happening. They would tell me how many kids were there. They
Yeah.
would tell me names. So, my kids help me out with my nosiness.
That's so funny.
They are definitely fact providers. How long do you think it took before you got your first visit when they were first removed? Let's say when they were placed with the relative.
So when they were placed with the relative, and like I wanted to talk on this too, being placed with a relative or like a family member or someone else's family member, I've seen a lot of parents don't get their stuff together because they're with family. When you put them in foster care, it's like that shock, and it's like, crap, I have to do what I got to do to get my kids back. But my visits were actually the first visit was on my birthday, which is coming up.
Ah,
So,
a little anniversary there.
yeah, my first visit was on my birthday, and it was at a library with the kids. And I sat on the floor with the baby when she was like 3 months old. And when I sat on the floor, all the caseworkers stood up and looked at me like I was gonna like take my baby out of the room.
When you sat on the floor with
When
her?
I sat on the floor with her.
Yeah, I would say that a lot of the times when you go to visits, like, parents don't necessarily always interact, maybe because they're nervous or they're worried about, and I think that's a big thing about when parent time is happening with their children, is that, they feel like everything they're doing is being judged. And I've had other of my kids' parents tell me that, is like, that visits, they can't wait till they get unsupervised visits. Not because they're, doing anything wrong with their kids, but because parenting your kid with someone over your shoulder makes you feel like, am I doing the wrong thing? Like,
Right. I wouldn't want to do it either.
Yeah, whenever I had my visits with caseworkers, I would always feel like, well, what if I like yell at them and they're like, oh, you shouldn't be yelling at them, and it's like you really can't discipline them because somebody's watching you.
yeah.
Or like if you say the wrong thing, you have to watch what you say because they're like writing it down all on
Yes.
pen and paper in the back corner.
Right. Yeah, I mean, I can understand that.
How long did it take you to start making progress?
So when they first got removed from me, I didn't have a court date for about a month. And it's not like anything bad was going to happen if I continued to use for that month because they were already taken from me. So I had a month to do what I wanted to do, and then once the judge started telling me everything I needed to do, I got on the ball. But I mean, it took me a month to actually, be like, oh, okay, I did mess up. This wasn't, everyone's just being mean to me.
Yeah. Okay, that's good. I mean, you took responsibility at some point.
That was, and one of the things that I brag about her all the time is that, aside from just being really honest, like whether it's good, whether it's bad, whether it's ugly, she's honest. And I feel like everybody makes mistakes, right?
Oh, yeah.
And like whether we get caught in our mistakes or how big our mistakes are, or whether we have the kind of support to avoid certain mistakes, is all just a matter of chance. But when you're honest, and I tell my kids this all the time too, is, I'm not worried about you sneaking this or breaking this or doing this. What I'm worried about is how you handle it when I ask you about it. Like I always tell my kids, the only time you're going to get in trouble is if you lie. So, and it's so funny to me that like they still will lie about things sometimes. Yep. It's like, you weren't going to get in trouble except you lied about it. And I know you didn't. So, I just, I think honesty is one of the most important things in the world.
It is.
And no matter what you do wrong, like if you can be honest about it, then that's the hugest thing. And so in addition to her being super honest, I feel like very early on she took responsibility. And so, and I always say when people ask me about, how you could kind of tell when kids are going to go home or not, to me, the measure is whether a parent takes responsibility or not.
Totally.
And sometimes that's not always true because sometimes kids go home and parents are still like, I never did anything wrong. And it's really just a matter of, a judge on a certain day or checking off some boxes and people aren't paying too much attention.
But that's not common.
Right. 9 times out of 10, when a parent says, I messed up and I'm going to fix it, those are the only kids that go. A lot of parents come in and, especially when you have your child taken away from you, that's a trauma. That's upsetting. It's a scary position to be in. And when you have something like that, it's like when you lose somebody, there's grief and you're looking for someone to blame, right?
It's true.
We were just talking about this with someone when we were talking about both of us have lost family members in the past year. And the first thing you want to do is, the first thing you want to do is blame yourself. What could I have done differently, right?
Which is what we both did.
Right.
Which is what we both did.
But also you're looking for someone to blame for that person having passed away. And I feel like when someone removes your child from you, which is like, as a mother, that's what is worse than that?
I mean,
right.
Yeah.
So the first thing you want to do is blame somebody. So it's very common when a parent has their child removed is that, they're putting the blame on someone else. So a lot of the times when kids first come into care, I hear a lot of, I didn't do anything wrong. I don't understand why they took my kid. Or, I even had a kid once who had told me, my mom didn't do anything wrong. They just, they didn't like her, so they wanted to take me. And so when I see parents who are like, I totally messed up and it affected my kids, which is this mom 100%.
Yeah.
And that's the mom who makes a change, and that's a mom who is there for her kids. So
right. I would agree with that. I've been in the courtroom and I've had a parent, get up there and say like, thank you for removing my kids because my life was in a totally negative place and I was able to turn it around and I got a job and I did A, B, and C. And the judge totally softened his heart towards her and sent those kids home. And that's generally, those are the parents that generally are able to get their kids back. Like the catalyst is instead of pointing outwards, looking inwards. However, I recognize how difficult that is because it is a loss and it is a grief. And it's really easy to say, this was really unfair. And I do think a lot of the process of removal can be really, really unfair. I don't take that away from them. And so I think it can be really difficult to overlook all that trauma and say, okay, let me look inside and see what I have to do now.
Yeah, absolutely. I would definitely agree with that. So what do you feel like the catalyst was that made you take responsibility like that and start making changes in your life?
I think what the big thing was when they were put into foster care and then I couldn't see them whenever I wanted to. When they were with a relative, I had pretty much open access. I could come see them whenever I wanted to. And then when they were put in foster care, like I couldn't see them whenever I wanted to. I literally had a little bit amount of time with them, and if I wanted to get them more, I needed to get my crap together and do what I needed to do.
So basically, and it made you fight for them because, I could definitely see how that could happen.
What are some of the biggest changes that you feel like you've made over this period of time?
Honestly, I dropped all of my so-called friends. Like I don't talk to any of them anymore. I had to delete them off social media, like block them on text messages. And then I had to like get actual supports, where before I didn't want to do that. Like I had to go into inpatient rehab, and that literally made me cut off everybody.
You were not happy about that.
I was not happy, and I think I called Jack once a month and was like, I'm packing and leaving.
I remember that.
I'm leaving. I'm not doing this anymore. And she'd be like, no, you're almost done. Stay there. You don't want to lose the girls. Just stay there. And then I'd be like, okay, you're right. I'm going to stay. I'm just going to give it another week. And then we'll go from there.
Yeah, I feel like, it would have been really easy for you to say, no, I'm not going to do it, but you did it. And it was, I felt like it was very characteristic of you. You like had this determination to get it done, but you made sure everybody knew that you weren't into it.
Case managers pointed out, and my counselor pointed out, that nobody thought I was going to go in. I was like, I was going, just at my time, not your time. Like, I need to deny a couple beds first, and then I'll go.
Right.
But they all said I wasn't going to go, and I was like, no, my kids mean everything to me. Like, I didn't want to go, but I went.
I knew you were going to go. And when they told me when they told me too that she's not going to go, we know she's not going to go, and we're going to start the TPR process. And I'm like, she's going to go. And so I don't know why I was surprised that they didn't think you were going to go, but I had no doubts that you were going to go. I was just, praying every day that it, wasn't too hard, because it's a hard thing. I mean, you told me in the beginning, this is like jail.
It is like jail. I couldn't talk to anybody. I couldn't see anybody. And then COVID hit, so then I lost all in-person visits, so that sucked.
Yeah.
But honestly, if it wasn't for you pushing me, I probably would have went eventually, but it probably would have been too late. But you pushed me where it was like, it's not that bad, just go. It's fine.
Yeah.
What do you think the inpatient rehab did for you?
It made me cut off everybody that I didn't want to cut off.
Really?
Yeah, I had, and that was one of the hardest things I had to do. The people that were my so-called friends aren't really my friends, because if you're getting me high, you're not my friend. Like, you don't care about me. You've seen my kids were taken away, and you're continuously like, here, have this. You're not my friend. Mm-hmm. So it made me cut everybody off, and then I think literally not seeing my kids for, 4 or 5 months, like, that was really hard, and I never want to do that again.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think there was good and bad with COVID. The bad, obviously, was that you lost visits. It made it more isolating. It's already so isolating to be in inpatient rehab, but then it was more isolating because, nobody could come visit you even. But then the good side of it, which is also bad, is that because it was so horrible, it motivated you and kind of forced you. But really kudos to not walking out when the whole world was falling apart, and you did the hardest thing in the world to do, when it could have been just as easy for you to be like, hey, I'm out of here. I'm going to go out and, maybe they'll TPR my kids, maybe they won't, but, at least I'll get visits, right? But you push through, and without doing that, you wouldn't be in the position you're in now.
I want to say the rehab really did help me. There was a tech there that I would have a meltdown and be crying, and she would stop everything she was doing to come in there and make sure I was okay. If I wanted to leave, she'd be like, no, you've come this far, you're doing so good. And I still talk to her now. I see her when I go to my transitional housing, so she's still around, and I'm really thankful for her. I couldn't stand her when I was there, but I love her now. She's great now.
Yeah.
That's so good. It's kind of like you labored for your kids twice,
Yeah, for sure.
Or 3 times.
Yeah.
Sometimes.
Oh, yeah.
So speaking of that, how important do you think, because, not to take, I feel like, so much of this has come from your determination, right? Mm-hmm. I've seen a lot of parents be put in the position you're in, but not endure the way that you have. so, that's coming from your own inner determination. But how helpful was the support? I know that your mom is a huge support to you. And how much do you think that really kind of helped you to be able to accomplish what you needed to?
So, in the beginning, like my mom is my best friend. Like I can go to my mom with anything, but at the same time, my mom wants to believe that I'm doing so good, so like all the time, that like when I am messing up, she doesn't want to believe it.
Right.
So, I did have therapy with her when I was in my rehab, and I had to let her know, like, don't yell at me and tell me you think I'm messing up, but like have a conversation with me. And she did actually do that when I came home. I hung out with a friend that my brother had a baby with, but I've known her since I was like in 8th grade, and she was the first person who ever used with me, and she sat me down and was like, I understand you're doing good, but I don't want you to have that, be in that situation. So like if you want to see her, like you have to be supervised so you guys don't,
That's
fall off
awesome.
the wagon again.
Good for her to
Wow.
like be part of that accountability for you. That's
Yeah.
awesome. I mean, she's pretty great. I know that your kids love the heck out of her, and that's really cool that you get to have that relationship.
Yeah, I love my mom to death. She's amazing. I probably wouldn't be where I am without her either, because like she made it where I didn't have to, I had to stand on my own 2 feet to come home, but at the same time it wasn't so stressful where I had to pay for everything, where a lot of people, that's what they have to do. Like my mom didn't want to stress me out, so when I first came home I was only working like 20 hours a week, and like I didn't have to pay for anything because I pretty much paid for whatever the girls needed on our visits, and that was it. And even then she still wouldn't even make me pay all of that.
Wow.
Where other people, they like literally just have themselves to depend on, and like it is stressful when you're like new to recovery and you're trying to work a full-time job and do whatever's on your case plan and see your kids, and that stress is like, sometimes it's like, well, why am I even doing this? Like it's hard. But
Right.
I had my mom's support, and I had your support a lot, because like there was times I was going to be like, I don't want to, like, this is hard, I don't want to do this, and you guys are like, no, you got this.
Well, you did have it.
Yeah, you did it.
I have a question for you. What do you wish foster parents understood about biological parents? Like if you could just think of one thing that most foster parents may have misconceptions on or not understand about biological parents, what would you tell us?
So, I mean, you honestly understand a lot, but most foster parents that I've seen through other programs and where my son is currently at, they think we made a mistake and that mistake defines us, where you don't, and you see that I can do good, and I'm not a crappy person. I am not a bad mom, but like you let me prove that, where my son's foster mom has this look that I messed up, and that defines me, and she doesn't let me have a chance to prove her wrong.
Yeah, I think that I would say when I would want to look at foster caregivers in general, like one of the weak points is definitely that a lot of us make pass judgment on biological parents without really understanding where they're from. And when you start to understand what they've experienced and why they've experienced, there's a much bigger person than the actions that they took on the day or the reasons that their child was removed. And I think that's definitely something that we all need to check ourselves on all the time. And even as we're co-parenting and have more kids that come through our homes, to remind ourselves that and have more patience and respect, especially for their parents.
Yeah, I think too, oftentimes we're faced with this situation where two things can be true at the same time, that the situation can be heartbreaking and the situation that caused it can break your heart at the same time, and unfortunately
Absolutely.
that causes removal sometimes.
Okay, and what do you think foster parents can do to help biological parents more?
I think if foster parents, and it has to, I don't know, because the biological parent has to be willing to change before I feel like the foster parent should like offer any more assistance, like get to know them and see maybe why they made their mistake and see what they can do to help you, because I mean at the end of it, like we're all just trying to help each other. Like everybody just wants the kids back with their biological mom. So I mean, get to know them and like offer help if they need help, or like even when you're reunified with your kids and like you need a break, because kids are hard and it takes a village to raise them.
They are hard.
Yes, they are hard.
Offer that assistance. Don't just be like, here's your kids back, I'm never going to see you again, because that's also not fair to the kids, because they've grown bonds with the people they've lived with.
I think most foster parents that I know just love the heck out of when we hear afterwards, like, hey, can they come hang out, or do you want to come hang out? Like, I think that's the absolute best stories that you ever have with any kid that has lived in your house, is when you get to maintain that relationship after. And I was talking to someone who works with child mental health yesterday, and she was saying how like the most important thing, and this goes in the whole co-parenting thing, is when the child, once they're reunified, if they're not able to be reunified, if they're adopted, the most important thing is that child gets to have everyone that they love in their life. And that means if they're reunified, that they still get to have their foster family in their life. And if they do end up having to be adopted, that they still get their biological parents in their life because they love them.
Right.
So I think that's huge. And I love that you let us maintain our connection, and, you know your family to us. So, so what you're saying is what foster parents can do to help biological parents more is to just be encouraging and understanding of who they might be, have patience for them as they're growing, and to be willing to maintain relationships, right?
Yes.
Okay.
So what can case managers do to help biological parents be more successful?
Be that support that they need. Don't be like, this is what you need to do, and like just do it. Like if somebody needs help with something, like help them, and like don't be criticizing on them. Or
so it sounds like what you're saying is more communication, right?
Yeah.
Being more supportive. What do you think the system can do in general to help biological parents be more successful?
Honestly, and it sucks, it's gonna suck for some people, but like having the relatives be a caregiver for the kids at all. Like if you would have taken that away from me in the beginning, I probably would have got my crap together so much faster, because then I didn't have open access to them. Like I would have got my crap together. If you wouldn't have taken them and like broke that bond that I needed to be broken, I wouldn't have.
That's interesting, because I've wondered that for various cases, and then when rights are terminated, it's such a tragedy.
Yeah, if you just take out relative caregivers, which, I mean, it sucks for the kids, but at the same time, like, I got blessed with where my kids went, and I love where they're at, and, like, I have open communication with them after I was doing good, but whenever they were with family, like, I didn't have to get my crap together. Like, why? I can go see them high, and nobody's gonna say anything to my face, at least.
Yes.
Yeah, I've actually seen cases where kids were initially in licensed foster homes, and then were moved to relative placements. And as soon as that move happened, the parents stopped even taking phone calls from case managers, because they knew they could see their kid whenever they wanted. Yeah. And there was no sense of urgency to complete the case plan and get their kids back, because, hey, they could keep living the life that they wanted to, not make change, and still have access to their child without having to have the full responsibility. So I could definitely see how that could be helpful to have that urgency required.
What advice would you give to other parents who have had their children removed?
Do what you need to do, and don't wait and push it off. Like, it sucks and nobody wants to do it, but once you get going and you start doing it, like, it's not hard. Because in the beginning it is hard. Like, I remember when they told me I had to go to 4 classes a week, and they were like an hour and 45 minutes long, and like I made a joke, like, do you want me to bring a sleeping bag? Ha ha ha, funny. I had to bring a sleeping bag to the next one. But if I would have just done what I needed to do then, I wouldn't have had to go into inpatient.
Yeah. Okay. How does it feel to be reunifying this week?
Honestly, I just want to cry. I probably will cry. Because I did it. Like, I got my stuff together, and they get to come home, and like, even though they're coming home, their bond with their foster mom isn't going to be gone. Like, she can always call them because my daughters do have phones at 6 a.m.
At 6 a.m.
At 6 a.m. But they still have, they get to come home with me, and I love them so much, but they still have their foster mom, which they love too.
Well, we really appreciate you joining us today.
Yes, thank you so much.
And we just adore you, and
Yes, we do.
are grateful for everything that you've shared with us and how it's going to help, other people who are going through what you've been through. But also, it really helps foster parents to have a better idea of the other side of the equation, because you have to really put a face to it to understand
Right.
and really to be supportive, and that's the best way to help your foster kids, is to help their parents.
It really is.
Well, that's what we got for you today.
Thanks so much.
Thank you so much for joining us today. Make sure you subscribe and follow us on social. We hope that you join us again next time and keep on fostering the future.